Yeah, and as soon as we knew that it was going to be played on a day called Russia Day by the Russians in Warsaw, of course, a country that Russia occupied after the Second World War for something in the region of 44 years. And we're seeing these fans, Russia fans, what they wanted to do was walk or march, more precisely, to the stadium. And as soon as they wanted to do that, and as soon as the intention was clear that they wanted to do that, perhaps 10,000 Russian fans, 30,000 Poland fans going in the same direction to that stadium in Warsaw for a game tonight, you just knew that the potential was for clashes to occur between them. We've seen, as you rightly say, Anna, we've seen several injuries. We've seen this guy bending down, his bloodied head. We've seen firecrackers and fireworks thrown into crowds. We've seen fans posturing across police lines. Quite a big police presence, police vehicles and policemen wielding batons dressed in the black. And, you know, these are the kind of scenes, of course, I guess we have to be grateful that we're not watching England fans involved in this kind of trouble, which might have happened in the past, but isn't happening here. These are Polish and Russian fans, and clearly there has been an air of antagonism between these two sets of fans, and you just wonder what might happen now in the run-up to the game. We're still, what, an hour and three-quarters away from the start of the game, and what might actually happen after the game as well.
I mean, you always have to keep this in perspective,
yeah,
don't you? I mean, we're focusing on the clashes that there've been, but we have heard, as you said, several injured. Some of the fans saying they won't, of course they won't be making trouble. All they're trying to do is march to the national stadium. But that in itself, as you were saying, is antagonistic, perhaps, for the Polish people.
It is because of the history and relatively recent history. That, you know, in a crowd like it, you always will get some antagonists. You're quite right to point out, of course, that you know, we will focus with our cameras on the trouble spots, and when we see a wider view, actually it seems much calmer with fans walking along that road. But as soon, of course, as those Russia fans announced the intention to kind of celebrate their own day on Polish territory, if that's not too heavy a way of putting it, you knew that would antagonise the many Poland fans that are going there. And of course there are football tensions as well behind this, because Poland need a result. Russia won their first game 4-1. If they win tonight, they're pretty much through to the quarter-finals. And Poland, you know, are the little man, but of course it's being played in their own country, in front of their own fans, and there will be a certain sense of pride that they want to do well in it. But this clearly, in the build-up to it, hasn't helped. And sadly, we've seen so far in Euro 2012 some items, some pockets of trouble, and this is the biggest yet.
Stay there, Ian. Let's bring in our Moscow correspondent Amanda Walker, who's covering the tournament for us. She joins us live from Donetsk in the Ukraine now. And certainly, Amanda, the Polish Interior Minister had described the security operation for today as the greatest ever challenge for law and order forces in the capital. It appears his comments have been borne out by what we've seen so far.
Yeah, I think there was an expectation that this could be a flashpoint for violence in this tournament. Of course, there are historical differences between the two countries, and at present they have big diplomatic problems when you look at the countries' views of each other. Poland generally has a feeling that Russia almost wants to destroy its sovereignty, and Russia suspicious of Poland's diplomatic stance on the EU, on NATO, on issues like that. So of course that filters down. But what we're looking at here is what perhaps was expected. You've got two elements here within both teams, within both certainly the supporters, the fans, and it is a hardcore element. We heard reports prior to this tournament about hooliganism existing within Polish fans, and we've seen at the start of this tournament Russian fans under investigation for attacking stewards. So there was a sense tonight that perhaps the Polish fans would want some kind of revenge, and when you put into the mix the fact that this is Russia Day and you've got the fans marching through the centre of the city, it really does heighten any tension that might be existing there. There were reports in Russian media that some fans were planning to take into the stadium a big banner reading Smolensk. Now that, of course, was the scene of that plane crash 2 years ago in which the Polish president, Lech Kaczynski, was killed. Now that all surrounds again another big historical issue, a big problem between the two countries, the Katyń massacre in 1940. 20,000 Polish nationals were killed by Soviet forces then, and it was a memorial service that Lech Kaczynski, the Polish president, was on his way to attend when that plane crashed and he was killed. So that happened 2 years ago. That's left a lot of suspicions between the two countries, investigations from both sides offering different conclusions as to what actually happened, but it really adds up to a lot of tension between the two countries, and the fact that this is a football tournament where both supporters have that hardcore element on Russia Day. I think there was high expectation for violence, and these images that we can see certainly suggest that that is happening.
From what you've seen covering the tournament so far, Amanda, how prepared are the host nations for security incidents like this?
Well, there's been so much talk of it, hasn't there? But what we've heard less of is the actual plans that are in place to tackle these sorts of incidents if and when they happen. The main headline that has been really prior to the tournament, people almost bracing themselves for racial tensions. This is perhaps a little different situation that we're dealing with here, but I think both sides have said all along that they'd be prepared for this kind of thing. They urge fans to be on their best behaviour, to represent both Poland and Russia in the best possible way, but these images do exactly the opposite of that. So obviously there will be UEFA investigations into this, and both countries themselves will have to come up with something, because of course this isn't necessarily the first time, the only time this could happen. They will face each other again potentially in this tournament, so it has to be dealt with, and I think it'll be interesting to see how the authorities respond to this, and also interesting to see what happens after the match, because one team isn't going to be happy.
Indeed, so Russia go into this on such a high as well, don't they? Amanda Walker, Andy and Doveston, thanks to both of you. From those live pictures, thankfully, as you can see, the scene perhaps calming down as the fans, perhaps the genuine fans even, make their way towards the National Stadium for that 7:45 kick-off.